Assalamu alaikum, guys. Hope everyone is okay. What should be sorry about that. What should be a very interesting conversation, I hope, with the one and only Alexander Carberry, who we had on before, and so many people enjoyed his discussions with him. So we're going to be speaking about today race, identity, and health, and the kind of intersectionality between the topics of race, identity, and health. And if at all, is there a link between race and health? Yo, Pops, I'll go on and come and check you soon. Hope the baby's well. So just going to wait until Abubakar joins, or Alexander. Just waiting for him to join. Give me a moment. So, can everyone hear me okay, yeah? Is sound okay? Hope everything's okay. Just waiting for Abubakar Carberry to join. Habibi, Saeed, Sajid, hope you're okay. There we had the main man himself. I'll add him. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How you doing?
How are you?
Okay, I got to get that camera right now. Okay, bismillah. Okay.
So, mini introduction to those who are unaware. This is someone I consider a friend, a teacher, a mentor, someone I rely on for advice. He's a natural health expert, as well as being the author of Know Yourself, which is a book I always tell people to download and buy. Sorry, Know Yourself, which is speaking about the 4 temperaments, which we can have a discussion about that another time. But the topic of discussion today is anything I missed. Should I add something? Sorry.
No, that's it, really.
Okay, there's much more to it, but out of his humility, he's not allowing me to add anything to it. So, the topic of today is race, identity, and health. And I think it's quite topical. If we're going to talk about systemic racism, that should cover all institutions. That needs to cover institutions, whether it's going to be justice, policing, as well as health. So we know in the midst of a coronavirus that Black and ethnic minority groups are more likely to be affected and actually die from coronavirus. So again, my first question to you then, Sidi, is what is the link, if at all, and what is the intersectionality that combines race, identity, and health?
I think that the current discourse has framed things in a language which likes to talk about things like intersectionality.
Yeah.
And I think that whilst it's intellectually sound to do that, I think it's problematic.
Okay, let's go into it.
Like, let's step right back.
Yeah.
Because politics is the emergence of our collective psychology.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Okay. And so that's a collective psychology, our fears, our deep contradictions, etc., they will emerge in front of us, around us. We build them as institutions. Okay? So our identities, so like a Black and a white identity, emerges from a common society. And reflects, I'm going to use a word, it reflects as a common psychosis.
Okay, you have to break it down for us.
Okay. And so that it will also be associated with patterns of psychological illness. Okay. So how am I going to break that down? When people went to the Americas, because whiteness and Blackness emerges from the Americas. When they went to the Americas first, they went with an ethnicity.
Yes.
Right? They were a member of a tribe, or they came from a particular land.
Yes.
And they identified themselves from a particular locality. And they had particular practices. So when Black people were landed in the Americas as chattel slaves, they were also white indentured immigrants.
Yes.
Okay, and they came from particular places.
Yes.
So they came with these ethnic identities. They were together in the same experience.
Yeah.
So they began to share the same experience. They began to intermarry.
Yes.
And another ethnicity began to emerge with another politics, which was problematic for the people who owned them.
Yes.
Because the politics, the way that they were operating with the indentured immigrants is that the indentured immigrants arrived. They only had them for a number of years.
Yeah.
After that, they had to give them some land and some money.
Yeah.
Actually, it was in their interest that they didn't survive, so they worked them to death.
Wow.
Okay? So once these two groups of people began to become a group of people,
yeah,
and began to decide that the people who were doing this were the problem,
yeah,
then they began to develop the discourse of whiteness.
Wow.
You're white like us. Right? So what they did was to cut the emergence of a natural politic.
Yes.
Right? And this is what we call kufr, right? Covering.
Yeah.
Right? And you know, when you begin Fatiha, Allah says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Yeah.
So he's identifying these three groups of creatures who have aql.
Yes.
Right? Who have an intellect, which is mankind, jinn, and the angels. Right? Yes. And he uses the word alam, right? Which is worlds, but which comes from the root alama, which is to know, right? And ilm comes from that, right?
Yes.
So what they did was that they emerged an alam within which they could continually dominate and prevent this occurring. Yeah. So the greatest crime for them and the thing they hated most was the thing called miscegnation, which was the mixing of, and they actually chose that word, right? So it's fascinating. So out of that emerges the black and the white.
Yes. Okay.
As racist identities.
Yes.
As race identities.
Yeah.
And as racist identities in order to cement a particular pattern of politics.
Wow. That is one of the best breakdowns I've heard of the emergence of blackness and whiteness. I mean, something that speaks to an understanding which I held before. I mean, the common thing, and you only really experience this once you go to Africa, or particularly Africa, and not exclusive to Africa. You find that there are no black people in Africa up until today, because the demarcating lines between people have nothing to do with your skin color. If when I went to Nigeria, even though I wasn't Nigerian, I still wasn't black. It wasn't me being a black person. I was ironically racially ambiguous because I didn't look like a Hausa or a Yoruba, or it was I could tell I wasn't probably Nigerian, but obviously I wasn't this thing called black. So what you just said kind of speaks to that. So now carry on. We're talking about the emergence of how white and blackness came about.
Yeah, and then but not only the emergence of that, but then the kind of politics which comes.
Yes.
So it's a politics which is designed for you to not see the place that you're in and the situation that you're in, and then make alliances from that.
Yes.
So I think his name was Fred Hampton, Black Panthers, right? In East Chicago, them, and what was a far right group began to work. The Black Panthers then began to work, and the Black Panthers began to help them to institute similar group programs, because the Black Panthers had a feeding program.
Okay.
So they fed children before school.
Yeah.
Right, and they did after school programs, etc.
Yeah.
So they began to help them to do that. And when J. Edgar Hoover saw that, that was the death of Fred Hampton. Right. He said it was something he repeated. He said he would not be responsible for the emergence of a black messiah.
Okay.
And I think they shot up the Black Panther headquarters in the United States.
Wow.
I think they riddled the body of Fred Hampton.
Yes, yes.
He was a young man.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so the fear. I mean, and there's a writer called Faulkner.
Yes.
He wrote a book called Absalom, Absalom, which is really, you know, he called purple prose. It's really thick prose, but he really looks at this whole thing of race identity.
Yes.
And the perceived within that Southern identity.
Yes.
The crime of mixing. So his argument was that they prefer incest to that.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And it's a fascinating word.
So how do we then now on that's a beautiful breakdown of the emergence of whiteness and blackness and racist policies. How do we then now link that? What is there a connection to that between? So we covered the first part. What is race? We covered somewhat identity of race and racial politics. But then, is there a connection to that with health now?
Okay. There's an issue of Creoles.
Okay. Yeah.
Or people of mixed heritage in the part of the world I come from, which is as they get older, they have a dementia.
Okay.
In which they rave about identity issues.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any fixing of an identity in that way, will impose tensions upon people. So you're imposing. Why did you do it? These identities were made to limit and control access to resources.
Yeah.
And access to power.
Yes.
So they permit the perpetuation of oppression and exploitation.
Yes.
And oppression and exploitation, Allah says, is worse than killing.
Yes.
Why? Because, okay, let me there's a very interesting thing about the human being.
Yes.
We have some basic responses.
Yes.
To danger.
Okay.
We have flight.
Yeah.
Fright.
Yeah.
We have freeze. Yeah, so we have flight, fright, freeze. And what's the other one?
And fight.
And fight.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally, you can't remain in fight too long.
Okay.
So you get caught in these other, and all of these responses, they control something called the autonomic nervous system or autonomic regulation.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are the hormones that your body releases, where it directs blood flow, and things like that. So in the fight flight response, your body shuts off or restricts circulation to the organs that aren't to do with cardiovascular control.
Oh, wow.
And then it sends blood to the surface, to the limbs.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So if you get caught in that kind of response.
Which response was that one? Sorry, the fight
response.
The fight response. Okay, the fight response.
If you get caught in that response, what you're going to get patterns in which the organs in the torso, having received less blood and less resources for a long time, are going to then manifest certain patterns of illness.
Oh, wow. Then
let's take I'm only going to give two.
Okay.
Because we know a hell of a lot about this, right?
Okay.
The other one is the freeze response that I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
In the freeze response, you can't do anything.
Okay.
So what you do is you play dead or you acquiesce.
Okay.
All right? So you cooperate or you play dead.
Yes.
Two choices. In both of these responses, what happens is that blood is taken away from the limbs, away from the head, and pooled in the organs, and the metabolism is lowered.
Okay. Wow.
Okay?
Yes.
So what you find is that with that, if people are stuck in that, they get disease patterns of stagnation.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And what we would call inflammatory diseases are part of that.
Wow.
And autoimmune diseases are part of that.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
And not only that, but when you're in a freeze response, one of the things your body does is that it releases natural painkillers called opiates.
Okay.
Because it's preparing you for damage.
Okay. Yeah.
So it releases these opiates. So remember that heroin is an opiate. So,
yes.
what people experience is a feeling of being distant or abstracted. Okay?
Yeah.
So those two things, if you look at what we've just spoken about, you're going to see that people are going to get caught in that.
Yeah, of course.
And they'll have patterns of diseases across the society which reflect that.
So more specifically then, how do you think that relates to the Black experience then?
Well, the Black experience is an experience, and now I'm a lot of what I'm talking about here, I'm keeping it American specific.
Yeah, for now, yeah,
okay,
of course.
Right, okay, but because when you talk about a Black experience, that is not an African experience.
Of course.
Or it is not necessarily an identical Caribbean experience.
Yes.
Or Latin American experience.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about the American experience.
Yes.
Let's take a city like Minneapolis.
Okay.
In I think it was about 1918, 1921, sometime between there.
Okay.
Real estate developers began to institute contracts that limited where Black people could own property.
Yes, redlining.
Well, this was before redlining. Redlining came out of that.
Okay.
Right. So once they had done that, it restricted Black ownership from 40% of the city center.
Wow.
Okay. That then had, so that there's places in Minneapolis that Blacks could not be. So then historically Blacks had to settle in those other places.
Yeah. Because
of those, then they didn't lend to them for some of the other places that they'd be in.
Yes.
Yeah. And when they did, they lent to them at higher rates of interest. Yeah. What it means is that you will experience disempowerment.
Yeah.
You will experience something of the freeze response. You will experience high rates of anger and resentment.
Yes.
And all of those things, all emotion is experienced in your body.
Yes.
So it has physiological consequences. So then you'll get disease processes which are based upon that, not to speak about the psychological cost.
Wow. Wow. So what we're saying is that the racialized politics of America is a direct correlation between the racialized politics in America to the health of Black people in America.
Yeah. And also the patterns of psychosis of white Americans.
Oh, let's speak on that. Speak on that. Let's speak on that.
You see, Allah says, "Allah tadghaw fil mizan," right?
Yeah.
Nothing will exceed the balance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, in the creation of in the creation of this kind of psychology,
yes,
then you get a sense of entitlement.
Yes.
And real anger when you don't get what you want.
Yes.
Right? So if you feel that people are threatening you, so what you end up with is a constant fear of Black reprisal.
Yeah, so I would love to carry on, but just to kind of throw it in there. It's like when Malcolm says this is the white guilt complex. He says, I'm sure you're aware before, maybe for our listeners.
No, please.
Yeah, Malcolm says, when white people are either afraid of Black people or kind of downplay the struggle of Black people, he says, this is what he called and termed and coined the white guilt complex. And he goes into explaining the white guilt complex is that white people fear a day that black people will do unto them what has been done to the black people for centuries. And he said, and this is not what he says, but I'm tying it to what you said. It's that white psychosis in the back of their mind. They feel like, oh, okay, we always have to fear these people. We always have to back of our mind. And I thought to myself, initially, I thought this was quite harsh. This is quite harsh. I thought this was quite a harsh statement to say. But then when you read people who are well-intended whites or well-intended people, well-meaning people, sorry, say that they fear they will become a minority in their own country.
Well, this is what Faulkner says. Faulkner says, look, this is what Faulkner implies.
Okay.
He said, look, white, if you make it about color, white and black make brown babies.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. They don't make white babies.
Yeah.
So if you allow that, it breeds you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what has happened is that by shifting from ethnicity to race and making race about color, so the differences between, because remember, white and black, they know white and black. I'm brown.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
I'm brown, they're pink.
Yeah.
So by making these super ethnic identities, what has happened is that then you have to fear mixing, because the biological consequence of these two people being in the same place is that the pinkies are going to disappear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It also means, if you're going to put it in those terms, that the darkies will disappear too.
Yeah.
And then you get
like a mulatto.
Beyonce. Right.
But then the question, I would like to come back to the point of how do you think? So I will have to speak about more about how it manifests in the health of black people. But my synapses were firing off when you said white psychosis. I want to explore that more. How does that manifest itself in terms of health, in terms of psychology?
Okay, that's I got to give background to make sense of this one. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a guy called D.W. Griffiths.
Okay.
Who's a filmmaker who is eulogized in Hollywood. He's got plaques in his name and so on. He made a film, a 3-hour film called Birth of a Nation.
Okay, yeah, I've watched it.
So you watched it, okay. So Birth of a Nation really created or it projected upon the American mass psychology the psychosis of the South. So in the South, and remember that the slave owners of the South came from Barbados.
Yes. And
they formed a civilization which was based upon the idea of the delicateness, innocentness, and purity of the woman, of the white woman.
Okay.
So what they set up was the danger to this of the black man.
Ooh.
Okay.
I mean, you're hitting on something. I mean, yeah, please carry on, but I'm just like...
His film does it, right? His film has these archetypal caricatures. And D.W. Griffiths, the only way I can describe this man is that he is a shaitan. He is a devil.
Yes.
Okay, because it was D.W. Griffiths who introduced the whole that symbology of the burning cross to the KKK. His film, so after his film, basically his film was propaganda for KKK recruitment.
Wow.
And the lynching of black men. Okay, so in that, the whole thing was there was a whole thing of protecting white women from the danger of black men. And so that we've got this whole thing we call Karens.
Okay. Oh yeah, Karen. Yes, Karen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things is that it's if you travel across Europe,
yes,
in any of the traditional societies that you've found, which become fewer and fewer because the price of whiteness has been the destruction of white ethnicity. Right? Because once they imported that poison back into them,
yes,
it destroyed white ethnicity. And then that whole way of being, then it becomes further worked by European philosophers.
yes.
And then it results in something like Hitler's Indo-Aryan Nazi movement.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things you see is that amongst in many of white cultures, you have this whole thing of the strong white woman, of the strong woman. We have to lose the word white.
Yes.
Right. And within her, she combines, she combines the different faces of the human condition, right? So because we can be quite evil,
yeah,
right, and we can be quite good,
yeah,
and so they would look at the woman in those terms, right? In their folklore, in a much more complete way than they did examine men.
Okay.
What happens in the United States is they really collapse and strip that to the creation of this archetype that D.W. Griffith then spreads.
Yes.
Okay. So what you get especially for white women, is a divorce from their own impulsive nature. Right? Which is psychotic.
Yes.
So then we have a whole movement of people trying to get back in touch, and the New Age movement is part of that, trying to get to reconnect with their beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's an example. You gave of like how white psychosis, as you said, manifests itself in the kind of archetypes of like the purity of the black woman, purity of the white woman who must be saved against the evil black man. I would argue that those archetypes still exist today, and I argue that those patterns of behavior still manifest today. Have you got any other examples that you can point us to of what we would say is a manifestation of the white psychosis?
D.W. Griffiths.
Yeah.
I mean, the shaitan that he is, one of the things he really projected was the criminal black man.
He rejected?
The criminal black man.
He said he rejected it?
No, he projected.
Oh, projected it. Okay.
The archetype. He really spread that archetype. Okay. And that archetype became part of, because first they said they were lazy.
Yes.
Then in the South, after during Reconstruction, so 1860s, the American Civil War, then they have Reconstruction.
Yeah.
And then in Reconstruction, again, the same problem arose.
Yeah.
Because you had many black senators and congressmen.
Yes.
And things like free schooling, etc., are all instituted by those men.
Okay.
They looked after not only black communities, but they looked after poor whites.
Yes.
And the response of the Southern elite was to push for groups like KKK.
Wow.
And because in America, freedom is guaranteed for anyone except, who's incarcerated for criminality.
Basically, yes, of course.
So that's how they got their slaves, to rebuild the South.
I thank you for that. I mean, again, just mindful of time. We have about 10 minutes left. But I feel like we would go amiss if we did not mention black women in this story. Because, I mean, a lot of the time you have, and I don't know if you're aware, a lot of the discussions right now, black women are very angry at the moment. They've spoken about the fetishization of the black man struggle in all of these discussions, and not the black women are not being placed in this. And they've spoken about, how black women are kind of pushed back in this discussion. And I think that's discussion in and of itself that has to be had. But how do we have those stereotypes today of black women, and where do they come from? So the aggressive person, the aggressive black woman, the woman who, she doesn't really take no for an answer, but it's also always seen as negative when it comes to a black woman. Where does that come from?
Well, just think about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the Caribbean,
yeah,
and the United States are very different.
Yes.
In the Caribbean, they didn't breed slaves; they imported new ones, and they worked them to death.
Okay.
By 35, a woman was barren.
Oh wow.
Okay. In the United States, they bred their slaves.
Yes.
So in the United States, black women nursed the children of the slave masters.
Yes.
Okay. So the whole idea of a mammy, so the black woman who will look after you, is a trope which is fixed in that archetypal situation. And then the black woman who stands up for her rights, is then projected as the irrationally angry one, because she should be the mommy.
Yeah.
Right? If she's not the mommy, then she's a sexual object. Remember, the mommy is always the whole idea of the mommy is that she's fat with very large breasts, etc.
Yes. You see caricatures in this picture. Yeah.
So then the other one is of this black woman with large backside, lovely breasts.
Yeah.
Who is sexually unavailable. All of these archetypes come out of that situation.
Wow.
Okay. So black women are understandably angry.
Yes. They've
had a situation in the United States that has incarcerated black men and women at remarkable rates. And there have been assaults on that community for... Okay, look, Chisholm, I think, was the woman from New York, the senator from New York who ran for president. The first woman to run for president in the United States was a black woman.
Yes, of course.
Right? From Barbados.
Yes.
Okay. Nobody talks about that.
Yes.
Right? Nobody talks about the woman, what's her name? Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
The woman was basically a general in the army.
Exactly. Yeah.
And ran intelligence gathering in the South, right?
And is responsible for freeing over 700 slaves.
Yeah. And skirmishes that led to important victories.
Exactly.
Health, right? This woman didn't even receive a pension.
Wow.
Yeah. The point is that if you look at the American system, black women consistently receive a raw deal. They're one of the best educated groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because black women do very well in education.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of focus upon many of the issues.
Yes.
And part of that is because the system disproportionately kills black men.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, that sucks up the oxygen.
Yes.
Right? But they're real issues.
Yes.
Right? The point I want to make is that from this fundamental primal, let's call it, from the primal sin of the United States, which is African chattel slavery, emerges a cancerous curse that just roars through their history as a crescendo. Yeah, and if they do not turn back from this curse, it will destroy them.
Exactly, and it's like I've said this several times. Like Dr. Cornel West, who says, this is a moment. This is America's moment of reckoning. And as an outsider looking in, it's hard not to agree with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
would you say that this is America's moment of reckoning?
I mean, yeah, I'm very fond of history.
Yes.
And the United States is the most Roman of modern states. Its constitution and its structure is based. They studied the Romans well.
Wow.
Right. And in Roman history, there's the period of the Republic, and then there's the imperial period. Mm-hmm. So the United States has never really had a truly republic phase. Mm-hmm. It's been an empire. It's really an imperial state. And it's what happens in the late Roman period is that they are faced with civil war, and so they end up with a military ruler which the first one was Julius Caesar. Yeah. And then that work was done by Emperor Augustus. So I believe that within a decade, yeah, that if they are to save that state, they will have to they will end up with military rule. Wow. Or a leader who is a puppet of the military. Wow. Because that is the only institution which has had to confront its racist psychosis, and it continues to do so, and it continues to do so aggressively. Wow. So it's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah. No, it definitely is. I mean, I know Margaret is about to come in for both of us very soon. I feel like that was a short but amazing discussion. I'll save this live, guys. We're gonna do a part 2. Maybe I want to speak to you maybe in a week's time, possibly. Well, let's have a chat. I need to look at my Okay. Yes, but I can't agree to anything without looking at my. No, of course. I mean, this is short and sweet, but again, I feel like this has been an amazing live. Guys, again, please check out the book Know Yourself. It can be found on Amazon by Alex Carberry, in which he speaks about the 4 temperaments. It's something that I've benefited massively from the book. If you're unable to find the link, please message me, DM me. I'll send out the link to you. And then if people go on Amazon and they look Know Yourself, yeah, it will come up. If you put Carberry or Alex, it'll come up. It will come up. And any final words you want to say to listeners or viewers? Does anyone have some quick questions in the comments? Any quick questions? If you have a quick question, please post it and we'll try to answer it. If not, I'd like to say something while people think about what they want to ask. Please. We are confronted with a unique opportunity. Mm-hmm. If you the word Islam, means to submit. Yes. Right? The word kufr means to cover the reality. Yes. So we have a situation here, and the contradictions of our society, we have to embody the solutions. Mm-hmm. Forget all of this. I mean, politics is interesting. Yes. But that is the essential political. We have to be the embodiment of the solution to these things. Of course. Okay? So that, I mean, one of the things that we've seen is I mean, I live in the Midlands. Yeah. And the racism amongst Muslim communities, it's deep. We have to be the embodiment of the solution. Yes. Right. So forget all the, you can have all of these lovely arguments. Yes. But when people come amongst you, you have to be the solution. And this age will belong to the people who are the solution to this. So in that sense, there is there's an aspect of Islam which is open to whoever grabs it. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And you might be Muslim, but you might not have it. Yes. Right. So you have to fear that, because remember that every ayah where Allah talks about the kafir and the Muslim, all of these ayahs address us, the kafir in us, and the Muslim in us, the munafiq in us, the hypocrite in us. All of those things are spoken about. People would read the verses, go, Ya Bani Israel. The reason why he's talking about that, he's warning you look, these were their patterns, and these are your potential patterns too. Be careful, right? So it's not so that you can turn around and look down your nose upon the Bani Israel. It is so you can recognize that they are a nation who went before us. They have earned what they have earned, and we will earn what we are, and we are earning what we are earning. So be careful.
And on that note, I'll leave it there, Sidi. Thank you so much for coming on this, and inshallah we'll speak soon, and then we'll arrange something again. Guys, again, please check out Know Yourself on Amazon and Alex Carberry or Carberry. If you're unable to locate it, please message me. I'll send you the link. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.